Drill or cut a hole through the wall sill plate under the electrical junction box location. You will use this hole to route the cold lead and the floor temperature sensor wire to the electrical junction box. Be sure the floor area to be heated is clean, flat, and free of debris that can damage the mat, such as nails, staples, or protruding objects. Lay out the mat according to your design, using as few turns as possible and ensuring that the cold lead is near the electrical junction box location. Remove the clear plastic lining and roll out the mat with the adhesive side down to temporarily hold it in place. To make a turn in the direction the mat is being installed, cut the mesh with the scissors, being careful not to damage the heating cable. Align the mat in the desired direction, ensuring that the adhesive side of the mat is down, and continue to roll it into position. Position the cold lead as close as possible to the wall near the electrical junction box. It must be routed outside of the heating mat, never under or over the heating cable, and must not protrude higher than the heating mat. If the splice is higher than the mat, you must gouge out the subfloor to allow the splice to lay flat under the tile. Run the cold lead inside the wall to the electrical junction box. It's important to position the cord label on the cold lead inside the electrical junction box. If it's necessary to shorten the cold lead, be sure to store the cord label in the junction box. Center the floor temperature sensor between two runs of the heating cable, 4 inches from the end of the heating cable loop. Run it inside the wall to the electrical junction box location. Perform the insulation resistance test, the heating cable resistance test, and the sensor resistance test before you embed the mat in mortar to confirm that the heating cable and the floor sensor have not been damaged. To perform the insulation resistance test, connect the ground wire to the black lead and both power wires to the red lead of the multimeter. Make sure the meter reads open or OL. Record those readings on the commissioning record. A low value indicates the mat has been damaged and must be repaired. You may contact your local distributor for a QuickNet RK repair kit. To perform the heating cable resistance test, set your multimeter to the 200 ohm range. Connect the multimeter leads to the black and white cold lead wires. Compare this resistance reading to the resistance specified in the product selection table on pages 8 and 9. The value should be within plus or minus 10%. Record these readings on the commissioning record. To perform the sensor resistance test, set your multimeter to the 200K ohm range. Connect the multimeter leads to the red and green wires. Make sure the meter reads between 9 and 25K ohms. Record these readings on the commissioning record. Embed the floor warming mat in mortar. Apply a thin coat of self-leveling mortar over the mat. Be sure to use the flat side of the trowel to avoid any damage to the mat. Spread the mortar evenly over the mat, filling in all voids between the floor, the mesh, and heating cable. Once the surface is smooth and even, allow it to cure to a hard surface before installing the tile or stone. Repeat the insulation resistance test, the heating cable resistance test, and the sensor resistance test to ensure that the heating cable and floor sensor have not been damaged during the application of the mortar. To install the tile or stone, apply a layer of acrylic or latex modified thin set using the notched side of your trowel. Tile and grout the floor using best industry practices and in accordance with instructions provided by the manufacturer. Do not power the QuickNet heating mat until the thin set and grout is fully cured. Repeat the insulation resistance test, the heating cable resistance test, and the sensor resistance test to ensure that the heating cable and floor sensor have not been damaged during the installation of the tile.